Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing, at which we're going to hear more evidence from firefighters. Yes, Mr. Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we are. May I now please call Watch Manager Paul Watson?
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Yes, Mr. Minister.
Mr. Watson, good morning.
Good morning.
Can I start, please, by asking you to give us your full name?
Yeah, just grab this water.
Yes, of course.
My name's Paul Charles Watson.
Thank you. Now, in front of you, there is a blue file in which you will find a witness statement that you've done, dated the 10th of November 2017, and the reference to which is MET quadruple 08044. And can I just ask you to look at that? Have you read it recently?
I have.
Thank you. And can you please confirm for us that the contents are true?
Yep. From what I can see, the first page they are. Yep. They're all true.
Yes. Have you discussed your statement or your evidence that you're going to give to us with anybody before coming here?
No.
Now, you've also done a contemporaneous note, which is also in that file behind it, the reference to which is MET quadruple 05273. Do you recognise that document as yours?
Yes, I do.
It's dated the 14th of June 2017, as you can see, from the fourth line. Is that when you wrote it?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think you've also got an exhibit at MET 000015606, which may or may not be in that bundle, but we
It'll be in tab C, I think, if you've got it.
Yeah, is that the real tab C?
That may be the last page. That's the last page.
Last page. There is an exhibit there.
Yeah.
Right.
And then before that, there should be 7 pages of Roman 7. Yes.
Yeah, there are several pages before that.
Okay, good, thank you.
Right. Now, can I start by asking you a little bit about your career and training? You joined the London Fire Brigade in 1992, as you say in your statement. That's right, is it?
That's correct.
And you're now a watch manager on Red Watch at Hammersmith.
That's correct.
When did you become a watch manager?
2003.
2003. Okay. And can you just give us a little bit of a summary of your career from 2003?
From beginning or from 2003?
From 2003. Which stations did you serve at?
I've only served at Hammersmith Red Watch.
Okay.
In that time.
And you've done the usual high-rise training, have you?
I have.
Okay. And have you done any post-Lakanal House training?
Yes, there was a package that we done online, which I have completed at some point following Lakanal House.
Right. And do you remember, what was the takeaway message that you got from that learning?
Like all our packages, just generally high-rise. I do remember the fire spreading to different compartments in that job, from stuff falling down from balconies, just generally, really.
Right.
It was some time ago, though.
Right. Who designed that package? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Who delivered it to you as a trainee?
I was a watch manager at that time, and I delivered it to the watch.
Right. I see. So you delivered that training?
Yes.
Right. Now, can I turn then to the night of the fire and your arrival? On the night of the fire at Grenfell Tower, your pump was G362, wasn't it?
No, pump ladder 361.
361. I'm so sorry, you're right, 361. And that was deployed as part of the initial attendance to Grenfell Tower?
No, we went on as a 6-pump attendance.
Yes. but you were deployed, I think, at the time of make-up to 6.
Yes, that's correct.
And that was around...
1:15.
Yes, and we have the make-up time about 1:13. And according to the short incident log, you were mobile to the incident at 1:16:26. Would that sound about right to you?
About right, yeah.
And arrived at about 1:25:06.
Okay, yeah.
And you were in charge, effectively, weren't you?
Yes.
And riding with you, let's get this out of the way, you had firefighters Murray,
I did.
Sefton,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
and Broderick with no E.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes. And you say in your witness statement, on page 3, if I can show it to you, at paragraph 2, halfway down, you say you knew where Grenfell was. I knew that it was one way in and one way out, and I knew that access would be difficult. How did you know that access would be difficult?
I've been to other fire calls there, fire alarms, and on 2 or 3 occasions. So I knew there was only one route, and it's a dead end. So if you drive into that dead end, you've got to be back out.
And when you arrived on that night, did you find access to be difficult?
No, because what happened, as we approached the tower from some way back, I'm unfamiliar with the road names, I got the driver to stop the appliance, and I was going to pull up there some way from the tower so we didn't clog up the whole entrance. But one of my own crew managers, Crew Manager Davis, who had already arrived at the scene, beckoned us down from where the dead end was, so we went along,
right.
And he turned us right for us, and we pulled up along there, so we didn't actually go into the entrance, which was the main concern.
Okay. You say at the end of the paragraph we're just looking at, we have aerial appliances which need a lot of space to get in. I was conscious of the need not to block their path. Did you at that stage know that an aerial ladder had been ordered?
No, I didn't.
Right. Did you have any thoughts at that time about the need for aerial appliances to access the tower?
It would be common practice, especially on a high-rise, to have aerial appliances attended. Right.
It would be common practice at what point in the make-up?
The incident commander, who was first there, if it's a fire that warrants getting an aerial appliance, he would order one, or 2, depending what the severity of the fire is.
Right. You hadn't heard, or had you heard about an aerial being ordered?
I hadn't, no.
At that stage. Did you come to hear later that an aerial had been ordered?
I was aware that aerials attended, but I wasn't told at any time. I just made that assumption.
Now, in your statement, again on page 3, you say that you parked on Bowmore Road, and at the bottom of page 3, you say, in the second line, we walked 100 yards or so to the entrance of the building where I saw Mick Dowden, call sign G27 from North Kensington Fire Station. Why did you park so far from the tower, 100 yards from the tower?
As I said, if we'd have actually approached past my crew manager, we would have blocked that dead end route. So we'd done a right and pulled up probably 20 metres past where he was stood.
Right. Did you try to park near a hydrant?
No.
Okay. Were you not thinking that you were going to be doing any active firefighting with water?
Yes, but the first appliances there would have dealt with the water side of things.
Okay. Now, the time of arrival, according to the short incident log we have, puts you at arriving a status 3 at 1:25:06. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah,
right.
That's probably correct.
Now, going back up the statement, you say just halfway down on page 3, in the last line, in my own mind I thought that the external cladding was fully alight. That's the last sentence in the third paragraph down on page 3, which is now highlighted there on the screen for you. Now, is that something you thought at the time?
Yes, I could see, as I approached, I could see a fire from, I now know to be the 23rd or 24th floor, from the 4th floor all the way up, quite a fierce fire. And I can remember walking thinking, how's that possible? And I know that all high-rises are completely concrete, so in my own mind I thought it must be something that's applied to the outside of the building.
Right.
It's the only thing that could be burning, because obviously concrete doesn't burn.
So you could, is this right? You could actually see the exterior material ignited?
No, I could just see a large fire from the 4th to the 24th. Approximately, as I got up to it, it was approximately 4 foot wide, and it was some way off the building, maybe 4 foot square kind of box straight away up.
Had you ever seen anything like that before?
No.
You refer to the exterior in your answer just now, and the exterior cladding, or external cladding in your witness statement. Did you know or think that the building was covered in cladding?
No. As I say, I know concrete high-rise buildings are always concrete throughout, because that's how they're built.
Yeah.
So it had to be something that had been fixed to the front fascia of the building that was burned.
Were you aware at the time of previous cladding fires on high-rise buildings?
Not to the extent that fire. I've seen fires where you may have a small panel, maybe to the side or below a window, that may catch light, singular panel, but this fire went all the way to the top.
Just chasing that last answer up, a small panel. Do you remember when you saw fires where you had a small panel on fire?
Just over the years, through the years, I've been to quite a few high-rise fires, and I've seen fire that's left the window of a compartment and gone above to the window above.
Yes.
So I have experienced that, but I couldn't tell you when.
Right. Were you? Do you know about a fire at Shepherd's Court in Shepherd's Bush in August 2016?
I am aware of it because it was my watch that was first in attendance. However, I was on leave, so I didn't attend it.
I was going to ask you, you weren't there, okay. Do you know what lessons were learnt or takeaway messages were received from that fire?
From what I can understand, with talking to the watch after, the original flat fire did actually jump up 3 or 4 floors, and so we had 3 or 4 compartments alight. But from what I know, it stayed within them compartments, and the people above, there may have been smoke logging, but the people above were generally unaffected. It was just them fire compartments.
Right. Did you get any training or hear any intelligence or even gossip about lessons learnt from the Shepherd's Court fire after 2016 but before June 2017?
I don't recall there being any specific packages. However, the station carried out what we call a PRO, so it's a performance of operations, and the senior manager came down and discussed with the watch about things that happened, and which is common practice on any 4-pump fire and above.
Right. Do you know who that was, the senior manager?
No.
Okay. And were you ever shown a slideshow or any sort of package of information as
Personally, no.
Part of that? Right. And as part of that discussion, was there any discussion about the risk of the exterior material or construction of a high-rise building itself igniting?
I don't know, because I didn't attend the PRO, because I wasn't at the incident.
I see.
You don't get invited.
Now, on page 3 of your witness statement, still in the last paragraph on that page, you say, as I've just read to you, that you went to see Mike Dowden, or you call him Mick Dowden. Do you know him?
I do.
Right. Do you call him Mick?
I think that's a typing error.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right. And you then say, at that early stage, he was in charge of the incident. We had a discussion, you say, and both of us agreed that the fire was so big that we needed to upgrade the number of appliances to at least 20. Do you remember who suggested that the number of appliances should be upgraded?
When I arrived, I'd had the short walk to the tower and took an oversight of the extent of the fire.
Yes.
When I got to the base of the tower, I kind of took a snapshot, and it was a snapshot, and said to Mike, how many machines are we, how many appliances? I don't recall his answer, and I just said to him, this is at least 20, just go 20 now.
Right. And what did he say?
I don't recall, but he acknowledged that, and that's what was sent.
Okay. And you say that what was sent. Who sent it? Do you remember?
Whoever was driving him, or so he shouted across, and somebody else got on the appliance and made that order.
Okay. He shouted across, did he? Or
No,
did
I
he-
was face to face, and he shouted across
Yes.
to make it 20.
Yes, okay.
And then we went into further discussion about what he wanted me to do.
Right. Okay. How soon after your arrival, which we, as I say, have put at about 1:25, was that discussion?
Minutes.
Yes.
Literally, when we got off the appliance, I said to the guys, grab hose, breathing apparatus, branches, breaking in gear, and we walked straight to the tower.
Okay. And so it was your advice which he essentially followed, is that?
It was.
Yeah. And we can actually see the time at which pumps were made 20 from the short incident log at page 18. I don't need to take you to it, but it's at 1:29:46. It was made 20. Would that roughly correspond with your recollection?
Yeah, probably correct, sir.
Okay. What was your thinking as to what you would do with 20 pumps?
So, to my mind, my snapshot, it had to be clad in a light, because as I said earlier, concrete doesn't burn. And my snapshot kind of said to me that the cladding in between the windows was fully alight from the fourth to the top. And I remember thinking, as we know, summertime, some windows may be open, there'll be smoke logging into that area, as well as one or two compartments may catch fire. So we're going to need quite a big resourcing. We're going to need a lot of breathing apparatus, and that was the thinking behind that, really.
Was your emphasis on, if I could put it this way, firefighter numbers and breathing apparatus, or was your emphasis on firefighting with water?
At that point, probably both, because I thought it was external cladding. I still felt that we had a chance of putting it out, as well as needing resourcing in breathing apparatus to access higher floors.
Yeah. Now, at that stage, as you said in the previous paragraph, that the right-hand elevation of the building was alight from the fourth floor to the top of the building. Did you have any thoughts at that time, when you advised him to make pumps 20, about 1:29 or so, about evacuation at all?
I didn't have any thoughts on it, but to put some context around that, at that time I was the sixth appliance there, so effectively we've got 6 firefighting teams. Of them 6 teams, I knew that at least 2 of them would have been expelled, which would leave 4 firefighting teams, 8 people. To evacuate a tower of that size with 8 people wouldn't be easy, because as you go in, and rightly so, the public, when they open their doors and see smoke, they don't want to leave, and you'd have to escort them down to get them to leave. So to start mass evacuating into smoke-filled lobbies would be very difficult to do. People don't want to naturally walk into smoke.
No. What information did you have at the time you advised him to make pumps 20 about the conditions in the lobbies or the stair?
None, but I could see the fire. I could see that certain compartments either side of that fire would get smoke logged. So I knew that there would be smoke logging within that building.
Right.
But I didn't know where.
Okay. And you go on to say in the next sentence, I knew, this is in your statement in the on the third page in the last paragraph, I knew that the building would be smoke logged and we would need a high number of firefighters with BA kits to rescue people. Did you have a discussion about that with Mike Dowden?
No, I didn't.
This is just your thoughts?
It's just my thoughts, yeah.
Right. In terms of needing firefighters with BA to rescue people, did you have any thoughts about how, when all those BA wearers arrived, you would organise the rescues?
So I was given a role, and that wasn't part of my role. However, when I got up to the Bridgehead, it's common practice to fight the fire floor, and if need be evacuate that floor, then you would go the 2 floors above, because in general the fire would spread up the immediate floor above, and as I understand it, that's what Watch Manager O'Keefe was doing, which is common practice for us.
Okay. And similar question to the one I asked a minute ago. Did you ask Mike Dowden if he had implemented a rescue or evacuation plan of any kind?
No, I didn't.
Is there a reason why you didn't have that discussion?
Because we had a very quick handover. I said about the make pumps 20. He'd done that, and then he said straight back to me, I want you to organise staging,
Right.
a staging officer. I now know why, but at the time I didn't know. I was a bit taken back, to be honest. It's not something I would have thought of at that time. But I understand from watching Watch Manager O'Keefe's interview that he was asking for quite a lot of equipment because we was getting people there and they didn't have branches breaking in gear. So that's why he gave me that role.
Right, okay. So to your way of understanding at the time, would it be fair to say that the emphasis in terms of planning was more on resources
Resourcing. Exactly.
rather than what to do with the resources?
Get the resources there as required, because they was being called for from the Bridgehead. So I believe he knew there was a lot of appliances coming on and he wanted to organise that.
I see. Now, you said a minute ago that you'd had a very quick handover. Was there actually a handover of control?
No, not a handover as such. He told me exactly what he wanted me to do. It was no more than 10 seconds, and I said, OK, I'll sort that.
Okay.
And I left him then.
Right. You left him in as the incident commander?
Left him where he was, yeah.
Yes, OK. Now, later on in your statement, just to jump ahead a little bit, if I can ask you to do that, to page 11, in the third paragraph down on that page, you say, for Grenfell, residents would have been told to stay put as you are in your safety area. Was that an assumption that you made on the night, or was it something you actually knew?
No, that is standard procedure from what we call from fire survival guidance. And a high-rise compartment is normally concrete. Should give you 2 hours of compartmentation, and generally your actual compartment doesn't get smoke logged from previous buildings.
Right.
So they would have been safe in that compartment.
You say 2 hours. Where do you get the 2 hours from?
It's just something I've read from previous incidents,
Right.
because it's concrete.
OK. Joe Smith, who ran the control room, or helped run the control room on the night of the fire, said that her cut-off time post-Lacanal House was an hour.
Okay, maybe that's correct, but because then of course you've got the door, the front door wouldn't be 2 hours,
Yes.
so maybe that's where that comes from.
Yes.
But the actual construction, concrete, as far as I can remember from reading previous notes, it's 2 hours.
OK. All right. But just to go back to my question, let me put it slightly differently. Did you, on arrival or at the scene, actually know what the standing advice to residents was?
Not specifically for that building, but as far as I'm aware, all high-rises are a stay put policy.
All right. And then you then go on to say in the next sentence, on that night I don't know if that policy changed, I never had that information. Is that right? At no stage in the night did you get to hear that a standing advice to residents to stay put had been revoked or changed?
I never received that information.
Right. Now, given that you were thinking about rescue by multiple BA wearers, did you ask Mike Dowden about whether he was thinking of changing the policy?
No, I didn't.
Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
Because it all happened very quickly. I arrived there. I'm one of a number of appliance commanders coming on. We had a short discussion about making the appliances 20, and a very short discussion about what he wanted me to do, and I left him there.
Right, okay. Can I turn to a different topic, which is a self-contained topic that you cover in a paragraph on page 7, just before we move on to the staging, and that's the subject of lifts. If you go to page 7 of your statement and look at the last paragraph, you you say, when I first got to the scene, I remember the lift door being opened. It was full of white smoke. Just pausing there. When did you go to see the lifts? Was that before or after your conversation with Mike?
After, once I left Mike, I had no more contact with Mike on the outside. So as I entered the building,
Right.
and I'm not too sure of the sequence of events, however, very early going into that lobby, I witnessed 2 firefighters opening the lift door with a drop-down key.
Okay. Now, I wonder if we can just show you a picture of you entering the lobby and put a time on that. Can I ask you to be shown INQ 225? Up on the screen. Can you see yourself anywhere in that picture?
Yes, that's me in the white helmet.
Right, carrying a length of what looks like 45mm hose.
Yeah, that looks correct, sir.
Right, okay. And we can time that at 1:30 exactly, in fact, once it's adjusted. But if we take off 36 seconds for cameras 1 to 5, which we have to do, in order to adjust it, it gives you at a time of 1:30. So at 1:30, we know that, well, can I ask you this? At that stage, did you know what the pump makeup was at that point when you entered the building?
That was just after I'd spoken to Mike regarding make pumps 20,
Right.
so as far as I know, it was 20 pump makeup.
Right, okay. And after you entered the tower, as we see at 1:30, where did you go next?
Several things happened, as per my statement, so I'm not sure of the actual sequence of events. I remained on the ground floor for maybe 15, 20 minutes,
Right.
but quite a lot happened in that time. If you want me to explain, I will.
Right. At what point did you go to the lifts?
I never actually went to the lift where the other firefighters standing there without a helmet. I probably stood around that area and could visually see the lifts through a set of double doors.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, how far from the lift were you when you?
Maybe 10 metres or so.
Okay. Did you get a clear view of it, or was it?
Yeah. I think I recall the doors being open.
Right.
And I witnessed 2 firefighters open a lift door.
I see. And when the lift door opened, you say it was full of white smoke. Could you describe it a little bit more?
Yeah, so
in a little bit more detail for us.
as they opened the door, a large puff of white smoke came out the top of the lift, which possibly unusual. It's not something you see all the time.
Right. What does that indicate to you about the development of the fire?
It showed that possibly the lifts were being used and smoke had entered the compartment. But the most important thing there, the fact that it was white smoke and not thick black smoke. If it had been black smoke, it would have been a lot more of a concern.
Right.
Because that would have meant that it was still hot.
Right, I see. Now you then go on to say, in the next sentence but one, I made the decision that we couldn't use the lifts. Why was that?
Right. I think that's taken a little bit out of context. The reason that was put in there, as my statement goes on to say later, I meet a fire rescue unit crew, and that's where that came in.
I'm not sure that quite helps me understand your evidence, I'm afraid. Did you make a decision that you couldn't use the lifts?
If anybody asked me, which they did later on, I made that decision that that FRU crew that came up were not going to use the lift.
Oh, I see. So in relation to a particular crew?
Particular crew.
I see, okay. Did you communicate that decision that you've just described to anybody?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. In the last sentence, you say, it was not an acceptable risk, so I made what I still think was the correct decision and deemed the lifts out of use. I mean, again, it sounds as if, from that evidence, that you are making a general prohibition on the lifts being used. Is that right?
Yeah, but to put that into context, our bridgehead was on the second floor. Generally, the lifts are only used up to the bridgehead. It would be bad practice to take the lifts past the bridgehead above the fire, which we would have been doing in this case.
Did you know that crew manager Chris Secret, the crew manager from North Kent, had already tried to bring the lift under control on arrival and had failed?
No, I didn't know that.
Didn't, okay. Did you know whether, or did you form a view about whether the lifts were firefighting lifts, properly so called?
No, because I know they had a drop key, which would denote they are a firefighting lift, but I never actually went over to where the lifts are.
Did you, from what you saw, think that the lifts had been brought under firefighter control or had not been brought under firefighter control?
I would say they wasn't, and that's why they was actually opening the lift door as opposed to just trying to bring the lift down off the firefighter switch.
Yeah. And what did you think about that?
As I say, because the bridgehead was on the second floor, normally we use the lifts to get our equipment, say, to the 10th floor where the fire is, 2 below. So to walk up 2 sets of stairs wasn't really an issue as such.
No. Did you have any thoughts about the risks posed to residents by having the lift not brought under firefighter control?
I didn't, not at that time, no.
Okay. Now we then move on to the next topic, which is the setup of the staging area for BA sets. Going back, if we can, to page 3 of your statement, you say at the bottom, Mike said that he had set up a bridgehead on the second floor, and he told me to set up a staging area on the ground floor. And I think what you go on to say is that the bridgehead was subsequently moved up to the 3rd floor, and then in fact came later down to the ground floor in general terms. That's right, isn't it?
That is correct, yeah.
I think in general terms. Now, just taking that in stages, can we start with looking at the initial staging area on the ground floor? And I think this was when you were first tasked by Mike Dowden to set up the staging area. Can I ask you to look at the next picture, which is INQ 226. Now, this is timed at 01:33:31, so just 3 minutes after you've come through into the lobby, and you're talking to some BA wearers. Do you know who those are, those BA wearers?
Not from that photo, no.
Okay. And then if you look at the next one, which you'll have at 01:33:44, which is INQ 227, that one, you appear to be doing something with the control panel. Do you know what?
So, just after I arrived in there, one of my own firefighters radioed me on my handheld and said there appears to be no alarm actuating within the building. So he said, can you see if there's an alarm panel anywhere that you could actuate?
Right. Oh, I see. Okay. So what did you think that red control box was?
From memory, I believe it had fire panel on, so I opened the door, but it wasn't. It was some form of ventilation system. And I believe I closed that door, and then I moved across to where the door to the left is there to try and get in there, because sometimes they have fire alarm panels in an office, but that door, I believe, was locked. So I radioed him back and said I'm unable to set the fire alarm off.
I see. Do you know who that firefighter was? Do you remember?
Firefighter Felton from my own station.
Felton, okay. And did you find out what that control panel actually did?
No, I now know that it was an extract system, but at that time I was looking for a fire alarm panel and didn't really pay a lot of attention to it.
Okay. Let's just look at another picture. This is 229. You can look at INQ 229. We can see the panel open with something on the ground. Do you know what that thing on the ground is?
No, I don't.
Okay. And was it you who opened the panel?
I did open the panel. I don't recall if I shut the door or not, but
Okay.
I didn't operate anything on the panel.
You didn't operate on anything on the panel. Could you make out what the panel did or was for?
As I said, I didn't pay a lot of attention because it wasn't what I was looking for, but I seem to remember some wording along the lines of ventilation, but
Right.
that was like on a plaque on it.
Okay. And at that stage, what did you do further with the panel, if anything?
I was still looking for the AFA panel after opening that,
Right.
but even if that had been a ventilation panel, I wouldn't have operated anything. It's not common practice, unless you're part of the management team or a fire prevention officer, I wouldn't operate that because we've got a lot of people in the lobbies and I don't know what it controls, and it can spread fire and smoke around the building, so I wouldn't have touched it.
Yeah. Was it unusual, in your experience, not to find an AFA in a high-rise such as this?
I believe so. I'm not sure of the specifics for this building, but I know other buildings on North Kensington's ground, we do go to a common area, fire alarm AFA, which covers all the common areas in the building. Can't think of the name of them off at the moment, but there are several that we attend.
Okay. And can I just ask you to look at another picture, which is the next one in the sequence, 230. Can you identify yourself on that picture?
I can.
Which is which?
I'm on the right.
On the right, in the white helmet.
That's
Okay,
correct.
That's you. And who are you talking to? Do you know?
No, I don't. He's got a command unit. Looks like a command unit tabard on, but I don't recall seeing him.
Right. Does the name Watch Manager Kentfield mean anything to you?
I don't think it does, no.
Do you remember what discussion you had with him?
I don't remember the discussion. If I'm honest, I don't even remember meeting him. However, it was probably to find out what I was doing in there, because they come round and plot out exactly what people are doing and where you are, and they take that information back to their command unit.
Yes. Going back to this question of the AFA and activating the alarm, did Mr. Felton give you a reason as to why you should be looking for an AFA to activate?
No, he didn't, but his faults would have been the same as mine by activating the alarm. Not mass evacuation, because that wouldn't have been the intent, but some people would have naturally evacuated, and at that time in the morning, a lot of people would have been asleep, so it would have alerted people to that there was a fire or something going on.
Right. Do you remember having any kind of discussion with Mike Dowden about an alarm?
Once I entered the lobby, I had no more contact with Mike Dowden.
Right. Having been prompted by firefighter Felton to look for an AFA and activate it, did you then have any thoughts about whether it was necessary to effect a full or partial evacuation of the building?
Not a partial evacuation as we call it, but I do know that the first, I know we can see firefighters there, but I was the sixth appliance on, and I know that all the firefighters before had gone up, so Watch Manager O'Keefe would have had people going in to assess the situation and bring people out immediately above the fire, because that's what we do, that's common practice.
Right. After you realised that the red box was not an AFA but a smoke control panel, did you look further for an AFA?
Yes, so the door to the left, I believe that door was locked. I tried to enter there. As I said, it's not uncommon for an alarm system to be in a locked office.
Yes.
But I believe I'm right in saying that was locked, and I couldn't investigate any further. So I radioed him back to say I don't think there is an alarm panel in the building.
Right. Did you try and get into the room with the door we see in that picture?
I believe I did, and I believe it was locked.
Right. Did you find the key to it?
I didn't know.
Do you know whether anybody else did?
I don't know.
Okay. In terms of the red panel, we can see it open there at the moment, and we can go back a picture or two to see you at it. Do you remember how you managed to get it open?
I believe there was a key in the door, or it may have just been a thumb turn, but I didn't need any. It just opened. I just went up and opened it.
Okay. And was there a key to operate the panel within the panel?
I don't know. I didn't look at that.
Okay. Going back to the actual staging area that you were setting up, if you turn to page 4 of your statement, you say effectively the third paragraph down, the staging post that I became responsible for was on the ground floor. You go on to say, it is my responsibility to hold firefighters there until the bridgehead is ready for them. Would that require communication with the bridgehead?
Yes, it would.
And did you start having communications with the bridgehead?
Yes. As I said, quite a lot happened when I first got into the lobby. But at a very early stage, I tried to contact Watch Manager O'Keefe on the radio. And people were, because we use one channel, channel 1, and if you're talking and somebody else cuts in, it cuts out the transmission. And I do recall Watch Manager O'Keefe looking over the balcony, and we spoke face to face from 2 floors apart.
Right. So initially, you were communicating with him face to face?
Yeah, he came over the balcony, and I recall saying to him, "Do you need anything?" And he said no.
Right. Can I just take us half step back and look at the picture we saw at INQ 230? Just to do 2 things with that picture. INQ 230. You just referred to a balcony just now. Can you identify the balcony in that picture?
I can see a balcony, but my memory of it was 2 floors up as opposed to 1, unless I'm incorrect there.
Right. Okay. So, but is it in this?
It's the same layout.
Same layout.
If I'm correct in saying it's 2 floors up, right. That's my recollection.
Okay. And the second question on that picture, we can see you talking to somebody in a red checkered surcoat or tabard. Is the red checkered tabard something that indicates that firefighter is from a command unit?
I believe so.
Okay. And do you remember having a discussion with that person about fire survival guidance?
No, I don't even recall seeing him in there, if I'm honest.
No, okay. In general terms, and we're looking at a time mark of about 1:36, did you know that fire survival guidance calls were coming in?
No.
You didn't?
I wasn't told that.
You weren't told that?
No.
Okay. In terms of what radio equipment you had with you, what did you have? Do you remember?
Radio, so we have a personal handheld which communicates with other firefighters only. I believe senior officers have one that's an airwave radio which communicates and can listen to control, but Watch Manager and below only have a personal radio.
Yes.
To talk to each other.
So you only had what we've called fireground radio?
Fireground radio.
Yes, I see, okay. Now, in paragraph 4 on page 4 of your statement, and we'll come back to paragraph 3, I think, in a minute, but you say there were members coming out, there were members of the public coming out of the building. Some appear to have no injuries, but many had smoke inhalation problems. So just pausing there, what did that tell you about the nature and extent of the smoke and fire spread within the building?
I think the way the police have put this interview together jumps about a little bit, and I don't recall seeing many members of the public coming past me at this stage. I do recall 1 or 2, but not many. And it's not uncommon for people to be evacuating when we're heading in as they're coming out.
Right.
And for that point as well, if they'd have come from the fire floor, I know they would have come through some smoke anyway.
Right, okay. Mr. Chairman, we're going to go on, but I've been asked to take a break every 45 minutes with this witness.
I'm happy to continue for 15 minutes.
How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm happy to do another 15 if that's okay, sir.
Very good.
All right, well, let's go on till 10:30, and then we'll see how things look then.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. We will do that. Now, in the same paragraph, after the reference to smoke inhalation problems, you say, I made contact with Watch Manager O'Keefe, who was in charge of the Bridgehead initially by radio, but radio traffic was so busy that we couldn't really speak. And then you go on to say, he looked over the balcony down towards me and we could communicate face to face. Do you remember at that stage, that early stage, what the problem was with communication?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, if we're making a transmission which can be heard by the whole fireground, if somebody else keys their radio, it just cuts the transmission completely. And there was quite a lot going on outside. I could hear people asking for water on, hydrant, etc., and it was difficult to talk to him.
Yeah. Can you explain what you were communicating with Watch Manager O'Keefe about at this point?
At that point, my role was staging, and I asked him, did he need anything as I first came into the building, and he replied no.
He said no. So what did you do next?
As my statement shows, quite a lot happened. I had a person running around with an axe.
An American firefighter?
American firefighter.
Yes.
That's in my statement.
Yes.
And I don't recall the actual sequence of events.
Now, if I can ask you to look at another CCTV picture, and this one is at 1:38:50, and is at INQ 231. We have the back of somebody wearing a tabard saying monitoring officer. Do you know who that is? Or do you remember who that is?
I believe it to be Station Manager Loft, but I'm not 100%.
Yes. And do you remember having a discussion with Station Manager Loft? I should just say the time mark for this is 1:38:14.
As I was outside the building, that's the only time I came out of the building. As I said in my statement, we had a guy come into the lobby carrying an axe. He said there were people threatening to jump at the back of the building. So myself and firefighter Murray left the lobby, and when he showed, we was both going to go and look, but when he showed me where it was, I couldn't leave the lobby, so I sent firefighter Murray with him.
Right.
And I would have said to Station Manager Loft, that's what he's doing.
Right. I think if we look at the next picture, 232, does that, can we identify from that the American firefighter?
Yes, that was him, yeah.
Right. Where did he get the axe from, do you know?
I can only presume one of our appliances, I've no idea.
Right. And what did you do with him?
So he came into the lobby, again, I'm not sure that he came in and said there's people threatening to jump, then he came back at some point and he was a bit animated. He said to me that where are the exits? I need to smash every exit open in the building, and started moving about. And at that point, I just said to him, who are you? He said, I'm an American firefighter, and I told him out.
Right.
He couldn't, he was very animated. He wasn't going to do us any good being in there, so I removed him from the lobby.
Right. Going back to your dealings with Station Manager Loft, do you remember after this encounter with him outside the building we've just looked at, whether you had any other dealings with Station Manager Loft during the incident after that?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. Now, going back to your statement, you say on page 4, in the third paragraph, which I said I'd come back to, that you had obtained information about the layout of the building. You say in the third line, I remember thinking that we needed some kind of sketch so firefighters had an understanding of the layout inside. hardly any of our firefighters would have been inside the building before, so I spoke to a couple of crew who had already been up inside the building. And then you go on to say, from what they told me, I worked out that every floor was identical and there were 6 flats on each floor. Crew manager Sefton drew a sketch on the wall showing the layout, where the lifts were, where the flats were, and the staircase. I knew that there was only one staircase, so I briefed crews on the layout 10 at a time. Now, I've read that all to you at length because I've got a number of questions. The first is, what time do you remember crew manager Sefton drawing the map or the sketch on the wall?
I don't know the time, but this happened when I'd gone up to the second floor balcony, and it would have been after they come out of the job, and they came up to me. Crew manager Sefton said that it was a complicated layout, and
right.
he said, send your firefighters to the 3rd floor to look at the layout. And I said, if you've just been in, put it on the wall, and then everyone can view what you're talking about.
Okay. We might be able to do better if we start with the exhibit, and this is in fact exhibited to Mr. Sefton's statement. We can look at it. It's MET 000016948. If we can just have that picture. There it is. Is that the map you're referring to, do you think?
I don't recall, but if that's on the 2nd floor balcony, that was our map.
Second floor balcony, yes. Now, Mr. Sefton, and obviously he's given a statement and we'll have to explore with him his recollection in the same way we're doing with you. So I'm not putting to you what he says as gospel. But he recollects that he drew it on the wall of the Bridgehead. He thinks when the Bridgehead was on the 3rd floor. Do you have a recollection about which floor that map got drawn on?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that map, and I'm looking the bag or whatever it is to the right. I don't recall that being there, right. So possibly that's a different map to what we had on the 2nd floor balcony.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now, you say that I knew there was only one staircase, so I briefed the crews on layout 10 at a time. Where did you get the information that there was only one staircase?
From crew manager Sefton.
Right, he told you that, did he?
He told me.
And did he tell you that having come down from a where?
Yes, I knew him and the firefighter he was with had just sworn.
I see. So just give us a picture of the encounter. Where were you when you first saw firefighter Sefton?
I was on the 2nd floor lobby, so just where there's a door between the Bridgehead and the balcony.
Yes.
And I was stood at the front of our row of firefighters, which is where that drawing was put, right there.
Okay. Now, we have crew manager Sefton's end of wear time at 1:57. And his tally in to bodyguard, a slightly peculiar time. Let's not go with that. Let's go with the end of wear time, 1:57. Just before 2 a.m. Would that correspond with your recollection, do you think?
Around that time.
Right.
But he had warned, so if that's when he's collected his tally, it was, because that's how he was able to produce a drawing, because he'd been up and seen the layout. So
we're looking at, just to try and piece this together in terms of your movements, we've seen you talking to station manager Loft at 1:38, talking to the American firefighter with the axe at 1:42, and we have crew manager Sefton's end of wear time at 1:57. So between 1:42 and 1:57, what do you think you did?
So the first wave, so the first 6 appliances, that I lost that wave of my staging area.
Right.
And then I believe as more appliances attended, I got quite a lot of people starting to turn up. It was still difficult to talk to Watch Manager O'Keefe, so I made a decision to go up to the 2nd floor lobby,
right,
or balcony, and set up my staging area there. So the appliances coming on, bringing quite a lot of equipment, because I'd spoken to crew manager Davis outside and asked him to get the required equipment, and we had like an equipment dump on that second floor,
Right.
as well as lots of firefighters in VA.
Okay. So do you know, or do you remember how long you were actually on the ground floor for before you moved your staging area up to the second floor?
I don't know.
Okay. When you moved the staging up to the second floor, was that the time when you met crew manager Sefton coming down?
Yes, whilst I was stood there, and again, I'm not sure how long after, but I remember crew manager Sefton coming out and saying to me it's quite a difficult layout because
Right.
it was smoke logged. There was a bin cupboard everyone was talking about that everyone kept going into. So I said, put the map on the wall.
Right, I see. Okay. At that stage, did you have any thoughts about getting an official map from somebody who could supply it, like the owner of the building?
No, because my sole focus was my staging area. That's something that would be done from outside for our command, chain of command, as opposed to the role I had.
Did you think to ask Mike Dowden for an official map?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Once crew manager Sefton had come down and told you the layout, it was you, is it, who wrote them? You say you drew the map?
No, crew manager Sefton drew the map.
Sorry, he drew the map.
Yes.
On the wall. He drew the map, but did he tell you anything else about the conditions that he'd encountered in the stairwell?
Not specifically that I recall.
What about in the lobbies?
Again, not specifically. I believe he'd been up to 4th or 5th floor, but we didn't really have that discussion.
Okay. Okay. Now, you say that you were briefing crews on the layout 10 at a time. Was that once you'd got to the second floor, or was that while you were still on the ground floor?
No, that was on the second floor.
That was on the second floor, okay. Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. Before you moved your staging post to the second floor, so while it was still on the ground floor, was any fire survival guidance information coming to you?
No, I received no fire survival guidance at that time. Anything that was coming in would have gone straight to the Bridgehead, and I was one step back from that.
Okay. Now, on page 5 of your statement, you say in the, I suppose, third paragraph, the second main paragraph, which starts, it was a dynamic job. And in the third sentence, second line, you say, so I decided to move my staging post from the ground to the second floor balcony. The reason for this is that I felt that communication between Watch Manager O'Keefe on the Bridgehead and myself would be better. The radios weren't working, you say. How long did it take you to set up the staging post on the second floor balcony?
So once the second wave of firefighters came in, and there was quite a few of them, we just walked straight up the stairs. Nobody put any equipment down. We took all the equipment and we put it to one side against the wall so that the hose, etc., was there so we could use it. And possibly, so straight away, instantly really, once we walked. So the time it would take to go up 2 flights of stairs.
Okay, right. So a matter of a minute or so?
A minute or so, yeah.
Okay. Now, and we've, given that you remember then speaking to crew manager Sefton and him writing the map on the wall,
yes,
and given that we've got his end of wear time as 01:57, can you help time your move from the ground floor to the second floor?
Maybe 5 or so minutes before that.
Before
as
that?
I said, concept of time, I didn't have a watch,
No.
but just prior to going up to them stairs, because once I got to the top of the stairs, I was on the radio to my other crew manager Davis, to organise the equipment we needed,
Right.
because that was my role.
Okay. Now, in terms of position, I'm just looking at the time. This will be my last question before the break, or series of questions before the break. Can I just ask you to be shown Master Documents Bundle Tab 5 and a plan of the building on the second floor, which is MET 000125593, page 10 of that. And there it is. Now there, it can be enlarged. We've got the atrium in the southeast of the plan, and then the walkway gallery, and then you can see towards the centre of the building communal hall and steps up. Could you tell us, by reference to this plan, where you set up your second floor staging post?
Exactly where it says walkway gallery, that's where I was stood.
And where was Watch Manager O'Keefe and the Bridgehead?
Where, I believe, where it says steps up.
And where were you standing? Did you have well, let me ask it this way. Did you have a clear line of sight through the doorway to
Yeah,
him?
I could see him through that doorway, between the two wordings.
Okay. So where were the firefighters, having come up from the ground floor, where would they mass?
So where it says walkway gallery, underneath there was that's where they was all stood in a line, right the way down the stairs, and above walkway gallery is where all the equipment was stored. Right.
And then they would go past you, would they, into the area where the steps up wording is?
So as he required firefighters in BA, they would go past me through that doorway into the communal hall to be committed.
Right. And the Bridgehead equipment, so the BA entry board and the forward information boards, where were they?
I believe they were all, where it says lift, they was all lined up along there somewhere.
Okay. Could you see those?
No, not from where I stood, but I did take one walk in there at some point just to quickly see the setup. Right.
And how did you control the BA at that stage, once it had gone up to the second floor? How did you control the BA whereas going in?
So it's common practice at a staging area. Normally it is below the bridgehead, but in this, for reasons I've stated, I stood at the front where it said, so towards the back wall of where the walkway is, and the firefighters lined up in a single line in front of me, and they actually went down the stairs towards the end. We had quite a few wearers ready to go.
Queuing on the stairs?
Just queuing.
Yeah. And when they got to the front of the queue, what did you say to them?
It depended what stage in the evening.
Initially, I'm so sorry, initially.
So, where it says walkway gallery, right opposite there is where I'd done a sketch.
Yes.
Or got crew manager Sefton to do a sketch, and then I came to the front of that sketch and just briefed them 10 at a time, or whoever was in that vicinity, this is where you're going into, it's the same on every level. The lifts are here, there's approximately 6 flats and a cupboard door that I showed them. Okay.
Can you just help with the Sefton sketch? Was it on the wall to the left of the wording, walkway gallery, or above it?
Directly above it.
Above it. Okay. So you gave them an idea of the plan of the building. Did you tell the BA wearers which floor and flat to go to at that stage?
No.
Okay. Who did that, do you know?
So it's common for staging just hold the firefighters, and if Watch Manager O'Keefe wanted any wearers for the bridgehead, he would call them through.
He'd call them off. Right. Very good. Okay. And you say... Okay. And at that stage, when you first moved the staging area to the second floor balcony, as you've just described, were you handling any FSG calls or communications?
No.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's a convenient moment for the break. I'm sorry, Mr. Watson, that we've gone a little bit over the 10 to 10:30 break time. But
you'd probably like a bit of a break now, wouldn't you?
I would do. Yes, please.
Yes. Well, we'll have a break for 10 minutes and resume at 11:15, if that's all right.
Thank you.
And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it while you're out of the work.
No problem.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go with the usher then, please. And we'll resume at 11:15, please, to count.
Mr. Chairman, yes, thank you. We can have the witness back. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Watson?
Yes, sir.
Happy to carry on?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Watson, thank you for coming back. Can I now ask you about the arrival of watch manager Glyn Williams? In your witness statement on page 5, you say in the third paragraph, or perhaps the fourth paragraph, the second last one on that page, senior officers were starting to arrive and watch manager Williams from Fulham Fire Station was on the ground floor and assumed the role of setting up Fire Survival Guidance, FSG. Do you know what time he arrived, or do you remember what time he arrived, roughly?
I do remember him arriving. I would hazard a guess it's around 2 o'clock because it was just after one of my own firefighters had come downstairs for 2 sets, which we haven't covered. But so I believe from the operational response timeline that was 58, and it was just after that. Right.
Okay. Now, just to be able to pinpoint this better, we've actually got his arrival time on scene as 01:55:50, and just for our record, that's page 85 of the ORR. So it would be after that.
It was after that, yeah.
Right. And how soon after you moved up to the second floor from the ground floor do you think he arrived? Was it?
Wasn't too long, maybe 15, 20 minutes, but...
So you'd already been on the second floor 15 or 20 minutes, you think, when he arrived?
Maybe 15 minutes or so, yeah.
Okay. Now, you say that he assumed the role of setting up fire survival guidance on the ground floor. Where were you when he assumed that role?
In the same position, second floor balcony.
Right. Now, and they were where?
Watch manager Williams was at the front door.
Well, he was there, right. Okay. Could you see him?
I could.
Clearly.
I
right.
could.
Could you hear him?
I could.
Okay. Now, you mention in the next sentence, Group Manager Welsh had asked him to do so. How do you know that, as you say, Group Manager Welsh had asked Watch Manager Williams to set up fire survival guidance?
At that time, I wasn't aware it was Group Manager Welch. That's retrospectively because I've spoken to Watch Manager Williams since.
Right, I see. So you didn't hear a briefing that Watch Manager Williams received from Group Manager Welsh then? Okay. When he set up, or assumed, as you say, the role of setting up fire survival guidance, was he alone or was he with somebody?
I believe when I looked down there was another senior officer, but it wasn't somebody I recognised.
And you say a senior officer?
As in a white helmet.
White helmet, okay. Now, I may be able to show you a picture. If you go to... well, before I show this to you, do you remember when you looked down and saw Watch Manager Williams, was he doing anything?
When he called up to me, he was stood right at the front door.
Right.
I don't recall him actually doing anything.
Okay. After he moved from the front door into the lobby, did he do anything next? Do you remember?
No. The first time I had contact with him, he was stood at the front door with a handful of FSG forms. That's my first recollection.
Did you communicate with Watch Manager Williams when he arrived to discuss how his role would fit into your role?
No.
You didn't. Prior to his arriving and starting his management of fire survival guidance on the ground floor, do you know how fire survival guidance information was getting to the Bridgehead?
I believe crew manager Batterby came past me at one point with papers in his hand, and when I took that walk into the Bridgehead, There was a FIB board there to collate information.
Right.
That's the only knowledge I had. I'd not been formally told anything about FSG. It was only from an oversight and an overview.
Okay. Did Crew Manager Matterby go past you with pieces of paper, I think you said?
I believe he did go past me.
Can I just finish the question? But while you were on the ground floor, or only once you got to the second floor?
I only saw him on the second floor.
Okay. And just on this, do you remember where Crew Manager Batterby was getting the pieces of paper from?
No.
Okay. Where was he taking them to?
To the Bridgehead.
To the Bridgehead. But straight past you, is that
yes,
right?
Which is correct, because I was only a staging officer.
I have it. Right. Did you see Group Manager Welch at all when you were looking down into the lobby from the second floor balcony?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. Do you remember when you first saw Glyn Williams, do you remember who the incident commander was?
No.
Right. Now, in his witness statement, Glyn Williams, again, as I say, we'll have to explore this with him, but he says that he was briefed by Group Manager Welch in the lobby, and then he spoke to you, and he agreed with you that you would be the middleman between him, Williams, on the ground floor, and the entry control at the Bridgehead. Do you remember a discussion like that?
That is correct, but that was done with me on the second floor lobby and him at the front door.
Okay. Now, can I show you a picture? It's INQ 244. And this is the first in a sequence of pictures, which we'll look at in due course. But that is timed at 02:15:53. You can't, I don't think you can quite see it, but that's the time we have subject to adjustment. Once you take off the 36 seconds for the camera. 02:15:53. We can see there a firefighter in a white helmet, so a watch manager, starting to write on the wall. Do you know who that was?
From that picture, no. However, that is exactly where Watch Manager Williams was stationed.
Right. And do you remember him writing on the wall?
I do.
Do you remember roughly what time he started writing on the wall?
I have no recollection of time.
Okay. Do you remember him starting to write on the... Let me try it this way. How long do you think you had been on the second floor when he started writing on the wall?
If I can just go back, one of my firefighters came down and I gave him 2 BA sets to take in for members of the public on another floor. And from reading the operational response, that was 01:58, and it was quite quickly after that.
Right.
So it's my recollection.
Okay. All right. Now, you can see on the ground a little white object by this firefighter's left foot. Can you help with your recollection as to what that might be?
No, I can't.
Okay. Let's try another one. Let's try the next one, 245. And this is a couple of minutes later, timed adjusted at 02:17:06. There's the white piece of paper. Do you know or recognise anybody in that picture?
Yes, the person on the right is Watch Manager Williams.
That's Watch Manager Williams, right, okay. And who's on his left, do you know?
I don't know.
It's someone from a command unit, but you don't know, don't remember who that is?
I don't.
Okay. And if we look at the next one, this is timed at 02:17, so just 11 seconds later, it is 2:46. You can see 2 firefighters there writing on the wall. One a white helmet, and one looks like a crew manager from the double black bars on the helmet. Do you know who that was? Do you remember that? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Obviously, the watch manager would be Watch Manager Williams. The crew manager on the right, I don't know.
Okay. And do you remember what their system? Do you remember what their system was at this stage, about 2:17, that they were using to?
No, but moving further forward, I know he recorded a lot of information on the wall and was calling it up to me as we went.
If we can look at the next picture.
I'm sorry, before we leave that picture, it looks to me as though on the right-hand side we can see the red door of the box that you were talking about earlier on the wall. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the door is now open. Have you any idea when and how it was opened?
No, I don't.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Wood.
Going back to the picture we were on at 217, this is at 246. Sorry, this is at 217.46. It looks as if, well, they're looking up. Do you know what they're looking up at?
I can only presume that he's speaking to me at that time.
Right, okay. Now, the crew manager on the left has got a sheaf of white papers in his hand. Do you know what those are, or did you know what those are?
They would have been fire survival guidance papers.
Do you know where he got them from?
No, I don't.
Do you know what their? Do you know what the system was at that time, 217 or so, whereby they got fire survival information?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Just going on then one, this is 219.10, this is the next picture, 248. We can see some information being written on the wall just there on the left. Again, does that correspond with your recollection as to how fire survival guidance information at that stage was being recorded, about 0217?
Yes, it does. It was all handwritten on the wall by Watch Manager Williams.
Right. Okay. And
could I just interject there? To the right of that picture, that firefighter is firefighter Felton.
Ah, okay.
And they're the sets that I sent in at 01:58 according to the operational response. So whenever he came out, that would be about the timing for you. Because he's got a member of public in a BA set there.
Yes, and we can just do this in real time. We've got the timing of that photograph, 248. That is 0219, and we have Felton's end of wear time as 2:06:37. So does that help you fix this in your own recollection in any way?
So, as I said, from the operational response that the brigade published, he came and collected them sets for me at 01:58, and it was very soon after that Watch Manager Williams started calling up FSG.
Right. Okay, right, so we can pin it down to them. And at that stage, we've got you on the second floor.
That's correct.
In the balcony. Okay. Now, just one or two pictures. Just moving forward, if we can. If we go to 0219, which is 249, we'll just run through these next few pictures quite quickly, if we can. Again, who do we see in that
You've
picture?
got Watch Manager Williams to the right.
Right.
I believe you've got the member of public with a white helmet there in the middle, and you've got firefighter Felton by the looks of that picture on the left.
Firefighter Felton leading out somebody wearing a white helmet and a BA.
A member of public.
Member of the public, right.
That's correct.
And the next one, which is 250, which is at 02:20:06, we can see, that's an adjusted time, we can see very faintly some information on the wall. I don't think we're able to read it. And do you know who the firefighter is in the foreground there?
I do not, no.
No, okay. And the firefighter holding the sheaf of papers is...
Watch Manager Williams.
That's Watch Manager Williams, all right. And then moving ahead a little bit further forward, let's look at let's look at the last one in the 220, which is photograph 252. Again, what's happening there? That's at 2:24 seconds adjusted.
It looks like Watch Manager Williams, my recollection, he was given quite a wad of paper
Right.
when he first arrived, and he was recording it on the wall.
Right. And then we jump forward in time to, by almost an hour, picture INQ 253. And this is at 03:16:29. Can you, and you can see the lobby is full of firefighters at this stage. Do you remember when the bridgehead was moved to the ground floor?
Time-wise, no.
You don't remember. Okay, and at the top of the picture, just towards the right, where we have seen firefighter, Watch Manager Williams, rather, writing on the wall, what do we see now?
So it looks like we're discussing FSG that he's got in his hand possibly, or he's pointing to the wall. There was a lot of recorded information on the wall, and that looks like me, a rear shot of me in the middle, and I believe the station manager to the right was Station Manager Wolferdine.
Okay, and you say station manager to the right,
So
on that
to the right of
close-up
me.
picture.
So with the so if you look at I believe that's me with the white helmet on the left of that highlighted section,
Right.
and I believe that would be Station Manager Wolferdine.
In the other white helmet?
I believe so.
Yes, okay. Now, I'll ask you about him. Do you remember what time what time Station Manager Wolfenden arrived in the ground floor lobby?
No, I don't.
Do you remember what his role was?
Yes. Once we'd moved to the ground and he came in, he was collating information for FSG along in coordination with Watch Manager Williams, and he was writing on pieces of paper to give to me.
Right, okay. We've jumped ahead a bit,
Yeah.
but I'll come back to that because I don't want to get too much into that detail just at the moment. But just in terms of continuity, we can see, as you said, Watch Manager Williams there working at the wall. To your recollection, did he ever stop working with the fire survival guidance at that wall?
No, I believe he left the fire ground at 4:30, and from my recollection, from the moment he got into that door through to the time he left, he was working on that wall.
Right. Now, we're going to look in a little bit more detail at the FSG setup. Before we go to that system that you and Watch Manager Williams in fact implemented, I just want to ask you about how FSG is usually set up between control and the incident ground. In your experience, how is FSG normally communicated in a normal incident?
So generally, if we have an FSG, it's normally singular, 1, 2, maybe 3 FSG. It comes through from control. They designate it as an FSG. It has to be generated from them. It's given via the main scheme radio, and in this case to a command unit. The command unit would then fill out a controlled information form with the details of the FSG. It would include number of people, floor they're on, flat number, just as a basic. There are other details if they had the time to fill it out. Then that would come from the control unit up to the bridgehead, and next to the entry control you would have an FSG post, and the information would go straight to them, and then they would take the firefighters from the staging area and enter them firefighters with one specific FSG.
Right. Now, just breaking that answer, which is very helpful, into a number of parts. First of all, command unit. Would you have a command unit at a particular pump level, or would it be when there were persons reported?
Yeah, a command unit comes on 4 pumps and above, and the person's reported.
You need both, do you?
We do both. Yeah.
Second question, in terms of what the command unit records onto, is that onto a control information form?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Do you know what that looks like?
I do.
You do. It's an appendix to the FSG policy. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it consists of 3 pieces of paper. I believe they're white, pink and green.
Right. Just to, rather than just ask you to do this on the hoof, let's nail this down. If you could just be shown policy 790, appendix 2, in tab 5 of our policies bundle. Let's quickly clear this out of the way. It's appendix 2, which is at page 8. Is that the piece of paper which in normal circumstances is used by personnel on the command unit to record the FSG information they get from the control room?
That's correct, sir.
Right. And there are 4 coloured copies, white, yellow, blue and green. Right.
That's correct.
Okay. Now we're going to come back, I think, possibly to some of those later, but that's the form. And then that form is then used to go to the Bridgehead.
That's correct.
How is that normally sent?
It can be sent via radio, but I do know in the case of Grenfell, it was by runners on foot.
But in a normal incident, would it be a paper chain or would it be radio communication?
It may be both, just depending on situation and circumstance.
Okay, and if it was radio, which channel would be used normally?
Again, if it was a small incident, it would probably be the command channel number 1, but I do know the command unit can use channel 3, and it depends, again, who's up at the Bridgehead. If it was just Watch Manager O'Keefe, he wouldn't necessarily change channels.
And once the information gets to the Bridgehead, how is it recorded there normally, in a normal incident?
So we put it onto what we call the forward information board.
And is that information then fed... Sorry, start again. Once you have information from the crews being deployed about whether a mission is successful or unsuccessful, is that information then fed back to control from the Bridgehead?
So, yeah, we would commit a cruise. They would go and do the rescue or not make the flat, whichever. They would be debriefed, and then it would be common practice to feed that back.
And how would what would be the chain of communication back from the Bridgehead to control?
Again, it depends on the size of the incident, whether it be by filling out a form or by radio and maybe a runner. Just depends on the size of the incident.
Okay. And would you expect that control would stay on the line to the caller and provide updating information that control had received from the incident ground in the normal case?
As in FSG or...
As in FSG.
What, to the public or to ourselves?
No, would you expect that control would stay on the line with the caller and give the caller updating information as it came from the incident ground?
That's my expectation.
Right. Now, turning to this system that you did set up with Watch Manager Williams, you say on page 6, at the very top of page 6 of your statement, having explained FSG policy generally, you say, but this was different. And you go on to say, I had direct communication with Watch Manager Williams on the ground floor, who began to shout up numbers for flats which needed FSG. Now, as to that, how was that different? Or how was the system more generally different?
So, on a normal incident, the FSG would be directly next to the entry control officer.
Right.
On this occasion, it was on the ground floor and our Bridgehead was on the 2nd floor.
Okay. And why the need for that difference?
I don't know.
Do you know why the FSG information wasn't being passed directly by the command unit or from the command unit to the Bridgehead?
I don't know.
Did it occur to you at the time that this was a novel or different system from what you'd normally expect?
I mean, it's fair to say, I didn't know at this point, but shortly following that, it's fair to say that the FSG was like nothing I've experienced before in sheer numbers.
Right. When did you first begin to experience the FSG coming in?
Once Watch Manager Williams was at the door and he started calling up to me,
Right.
that was my first knowledge of the FSG.
Okay. And was it noisy in the lobby area when he started that?
It was noisy when firefighters were bringing casualties out. There was quite a lot of shouting to clear the stairs for the casualties.
Could you always hear Watch Manager Williams clearly?
Yes, I could.
Okay. Now, when he shouted up to you, what did you do with the information he shouted up?
So, at first, I didn't realise the sheer numbers of FSG he had, and I turned round on that same wall where that my plan was originally, and I think I wrote maybe 2 or 3 numbers down, floors and flat numbers, and it soon became very apparent that that wasn't going to work because he was giving me too many.
Right.
So I took my notepad out of my pocket and started writing individual sheets. So he would call out the person, flat number, floor number. I would record it, repeat it back to him, and then I would hand it to the firefighters, one sheet at a time.
I see. Okay. So you say he shouted out person, flat number, floor number. When you say person, do you mean number of persons?
Numbers of persons, yes.
Okay. So you did shout numbers of persons, did you?
Only it wasn't on every FSG. That wasn't the case.
No.
He was just giving me the flat and the floor number, and on some of them, the number of persons.
Did he shout up any details about conditions in each flat or on each floor?
No,
Right. Did he shout up any priorities to you?
no,
Did he shout up anything about children or elderly persons?
no. I know he was shuffling the papers on the ground floor, so whether he's done that before he's called up, you'll have to ask him. But it was done in chronological order. As soon as he called them up, whatever number he called got the first attendance.
And same question, what about persons with mobility difficulties?
I didn't
Or
have
other
any of that
disabilities?
information.
Okay. And was he, so far as you could see, was he shouting up the information he was recording on the wall?
Yeah, so my recollection, he had the forms that you've just seen, and he was writing them on the wall as he was reading them. He would shout them up to me. I'd write them down on my notepad, hand it to the BA crew, give them a short brief, and they was gone. And
Okay.
that's how we continued at that point.
Now, in terms of pictures, could you look, please, at MET 000015815? Now, this is a photograph which is exhibited to Watch Manager Louisa De Silvo's witness statement. We'll have to explore with her who actually took the photograph. It's clearly taken in daylight, so not on the night necessarily, or at least not before, not during the hours of darkness. She says in her statement, and it's page 10 for our own notes, that this was one of the walls on the ground floor. Does that writing, or the location of that writing, look familiar to you?
Possibly the wall. I don't recognise the writing, but by the sheer amount of writing there, I would suggest that was Watch Manager Williams' wall.
Now, Watch Manager Williams says, and again, I caveat this by saying we'll have to explore this with him in his evidence when he comes, but he says he wrote 0215 at the top of the wall, which is when he started the process. Does that, first of all, does that tally with the timing, having looked at the photographs we've seen before, of him shouting up at you and starting to write?
I believe he would have a more accurate gauge on timing than I would.
Fair enough. Now, do you remember ever seeing the community room sign removed from the wall next to the door which the chairman asked you about earlier on this morning?
No, I didn't.
Okay. When you got the information, well, you say you started writing it on a wall. How did you do that? What did you do it with?
I took a China graph out, which is the same that he should obviously use there.
Now, I wonder if we've got a picture of this. Just bear with me. Can I ask you to be shown first of all INQ 244? No, I'm so sorry, that's not right. Let's try MET 000015625. And this is Exhibit 4 to Justin O'Byrne's witness statement. I may have to come back to this later on this morning, but is that the information you started?
No.
No, so not that.
That looks like the third floor, and mine was literally 2 or 3 flat numbers before it was aborted.
I see. Okay, so can I ask you to be shown a different picture, which is JOB 8, and the reference to that is MET 000013074. I'm sorry to put these things and fish for answers. Is that something you recognise?
No, that's not my writing.
That's not you, right. So that can be closed. How much information do you remember putting up on the wall before you switched to your system of jotting it down on pieces of paper?
Approximately 3 floors and 3 flat numbers, but he was still calling them out, and I decided it was going to take too long to process, so that's when I took my notepad out instead.
Okay. Can I ask you to be shown INQ 254, which I think we looked at possibly earlier. And again, let me just try this one more time. This is clearly down in the lobby. And this is later on. This is, I think, at 3:16. You're holding, well, I think that's you in the foreground there, in the white helmet.
That's correct.
You're holding something in your hand. Can you tell us what that is?
It looks like a notepad. We did change the system when we got to the ground. I became more of a runner, so
Right.
I'm not sure at that stage if that had happened or not.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
And let's leave that picture and move away from it. When Williams was shouting up to you the information, did he shout it up in groups, or was it one flat or floor at a time?
He called out 1 floor number, 1 flat number,
Right.
number of people, if he knew, because he didn't necessarily have that information.
Okay,
I repeated it, wrote it in my notepad, and gave it to the next BA crew.
I see. Okay. Now, at the point you were recording FSG information on the wall, for which we have so far failed to be able to show you a photograph, how did you brief the crews?
So I'd already give the crews 10 at a time a generic brief of the layout of the building.
Yes.
And they would have all heard exactly what was going on with the FSG, because he said to me, I'm taking a lot of FSG, can you take it? I said, okay, because I had all my wearers there, I had all the equipment we needed. I knew the Bridgehead was behind me, and it needed to be done urgent, because each FSG is basically a rescue. So I started to write it, that wasn't going to work, so I took my pad out, done them singly, gave that crew, that's where you're going, take the equipment, go to the BA board to be committed.
Right. Okay. So do you recall handing BA Wares a slip for the flat in question?
Yes, I do.
And do you remember the firefighters you handed flat slips to?
There were so many I handed out, I don't know.
So if I was to ask you of any given slip, who did you hand it to and when? Would you be able to help?
I would have no recollection. There were so many numbers, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Right. Now, still at the point when you're writing the information on the wall and you brief them, what did they do with the information, do you know, when they got to the Bridgehead?
So my brief was, I don't know the exact wording, but that's where you're going, take that paper, go to get committed,
Right.
as in to the entry control. Whether they gave that paper over, held it, I don't know.
Okay. Now, if we go to page 6 of your statement and look at the third paragraph, you say, at first I started to write them down on the wall, but it soon became apparent that there were too many of them, so I changed the process and wrote the floor and flat number down in my notebook. Once written, I handed each firefighting crew, called wearers, as they were wearing BA kit, the piece of paper with the floor and flat number on it. And you go on to say they then took that to the Bridgehead, who noted it down on the FIB and then committed the crews. I think you've said before, but just to be clear, how soon do you think, after you started writing on the wall, did you change the process to jotting it down onto the notepad?
Seconds.
Oh, seconds, right. Did you re-record the information that was on the wall anywhere else?
No. The reason for putting it on the wall would be to have my own record at that level. But I think at that point I decided it was more important to get the crews into the Bridgehead and get them committed.
Right. Once you gave the slip of paper to the BA wearer or the team, that information went with them, did it?
It did.
Was it recorded anywhere else other than on the wall in the lobby?
So they would have taken that to the Bridgehead.
Right.
And they would have said to the Bridgehead where they was going, maybe handed the paper, maybe not, I don't know, I wasn't present, but they would have had to have told the Bridgehead where they was heading for, so it should have been recorded at the Bridgehead.
Right. Did you yourself make a record of which flat or floor you had given to each firefighter or group of firefighters?
That was being done by Watch Manager Williams, and the important thing for me was to get as many firefighters into that building as quickly as possible.
Right.
I was kind of facilitating it rather than actually running anything.
Okay, you say it was being done by Watch Manager Williams, but Watch Manager Williams wouldn't know to which crew the FSG information had been handed, would he?
It didn't matter which crew. We had a whole line of maybe 20, 30 wearers, and the first two that come up, as he called the numbers, I was giving them the sheet.
Right.
So it was sort of potluck which number and floor you was sent to.
Okay. And do you know whether the BA wearers handed the piece of paper you gave them to anybody at the Bridgehead?
I don't know that information.
Okay. Now, I just want to show you one or two slips of paper that Watch Manager O'Keefe gave evidence about when he was at the Bridgehead. Can I ask you to look at LFB *0001929? Now, do you recognise these pieces of paper, do you think?
So from the left, looking from top left, paper 3, paper 4, that's my writing.
Okay, so
The
the one
other-
that says 789 on balconies.
Yes, and 72, 73, 10th floor.
Right. Just help me with on balconies. What's that a reference to?
I don't understand that. I was just recording what he was telling me.
Right.
And handing them to the wearers.
We don't see any details there for numbers of persons on those floors or in those flats. Why is that?
So what I would say, the other writing, I believe to be Station Manager Wolferdine, although I can't confirm that, you'll have to ask him.
Right.
But definitely on some of mine, and there was a lot of them on that second floor, there were numbers of persons. If I was given that information, it was recorded.
I see. So just to be clear as to whose writing this is, the third and fourth from the left at the top are yours,
That's correct.
and the rest, do you say, are Station Manager Wolfenden's? That's Pete Wolfenden.
Pete Wolfenden. I believe they are, but I can't confirm that.
Okay. And to your knowledge, where was Pete Wolfenden when he was jotting these pieces of paper down?
So this would have been when we returned to the ground floor
Yes.
and later on in the incident.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now, at the stage when you were handing out pieces of paper to the firefighters, were you doing any prioritisation?
No, but it was literally in number order. As he was giving me them, they was getting attendance.
Okay. Now, in the third paragraph on page 6 of your statement, you say that they were handing the paper over so that the Bridgehead knew what flat they were going to. And in the last sentence you say, the Bridgehead marked the number on the FIB and then committed the crew when it was time to do so. We've covered this just a second ago, but can I ask you this question? How did you know that the Bridgehead was marking the number on the FIB and then committing the crew accordingly?
That actual line there is just an assumption. That's what
Right.
should have happened.
I see. Okay, so you didn't actually see them doing that?
I didn't witness that, no.
Right. Did you ever check to see whether the information that you had and was giving them was consistent with the information that they were recording and the floors to which they were committing crews? Did you do that check?
For the Bridgehead?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Now, at the bottom of page 6 of your witness statement, you say, it would be common practice for crews that are exiting the building to be debriefed at the Bridgehead. I wasn't there, so don't know if that was done, but I did get information from casualties, such as where they had come from, what flat number they'd been rescued from. I passed that information to Watch Manager Williams, who wrote it on his wall. Now, just pausing there, how did you transmit that information to Watch Manager Williams?
My recollection is, whilst on the second floor,
Yes.
I didn't get any of that information. A lot of people being brought through were unconscious.
Right.
When I returned to the ground floor and I became more of a runner as opposed to the job I was doing at the second floor, I was able to stop some people and then go and tell Watch Manager Williams face to face.
I see. So the communication back to Watch Manager Williams about the results of deployments only happened once you'd moved down to the ground floor?
From me personally, yes, but I do recall Watch Manager Williams stopping people at the door to try and get information,
Right.
but I didn't obtain any of that information.
Okay. And do you know how Watch Manager Williams was recording the information about the results of deployments?
No, I don't, but he was writing quite a lot of information on that wall.
Okay, let me try it with a picture. Could you please be shown MET 000158815, which is, again, it's an exhibit to Louisa da Silva's statement number 5, which is the photograph I showed you before. If we could just look a little bit more closely at the middle column, you can see some ticks. Do you know what those represent?
No, I don't.
You don't. And you can see some deletions as well of flats. Do you know what that represents?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. When you got information about the results of deployments from casualties, did you make your own record of it?
No, I didn't. I was on the ground floor then, and I recall specifically, as I recall, flat 74, and I went over and told Watch Manager Williams who marked his wall.
Right.
But I do believe there was one or two others a little bit earlier in the incident, and we done that face to face.
Right. Now, while we're still on that picture, can I just ask you? You can see there that at the very top of the picture it says above 10 EDBA, below 10 SDBA. Do you know who wrote that there?
I don't know, no, but I didn't see anybody other than Watch Manager Williams writing information on that wall.
Right. Did you ever see Watch Manager Wolfenden writing FSG information on that wall?
He may have done. I know he recorded when myself and Watch Manager Williams left the incident. He put our times down on the wall. I remember that, but I don't recall.
Right. Watch Manager Wolfenden arrived, we have him on scene at 02:12:58. So that's actually just before the 2:15 that you also see on the picture. Do you remember Watch Manager Wolfenden taking part in either writing on the wall or being involved in fire survival guidance on the ground floor?
I don't recall when he arrived in the lobby, but when he did arrive, I recalled him on his radio, making radio traffic to outside, which again I can only assume it was the command unit, but he was, once he was there, he was quite heavily involved in the FSG.
Right. I'm going to turn to a different topic, which is your move to the ground floor from the second floor. But before I do that, can I just show you a particular document and just ask you whether you've seen it before? This is MET 000-16967. Now this is, I'll tell you what this is, or at least what we understand it to be, and this is an envelope which Watch Manager Sadler was given early on, which recorded some early FSG information. And Watch Manager Sadler was, he says, acting as a forward information board outside the tower, collating information coming from the command unit, precisely which one we will have to explore with him, before it was sent into the tower. And he says that this envelope was sent to the Bridgehead as a piece of paper. Do you remember seeing it?
I have no knowledge of that piece of paper.
Right. Now, in your statement on page 8, we can just go to it. You say in the second paragraph that you were told by a senior officer to move your staging post to the ground floor. And I say second paragraph, second substantive paragraph. There was a stage, you say, when something happened, I'm not sure what, but I was told by a senior officer to move my staging post to the ground floor. I told him I was involved in FSG. He told me to go to the ground floor. I left the second floor and took the wearers that were with me to the ground floor. First question, do you know, or can you remember who told you to move to the ground floor?
I did not know the officer, but I believe it to be Station Manager Walton.
Walton. Do you have any... What is that belief based on?
Sorry?
What is your belief that it was Station Manager Walton based on?
Because, again, I've asked other people
Right.
who was in the lobby.
What did the senior officer say to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "You're moving your staging post to the ground floor." I said to him, "I'm taking FSG, I can't move to the ground floor." And he said to me, "Go to the ground floor."
Did he give you any indication as to why he wanted you to move
No,
to
he
the ground
didn't.
floor? Okay. So when you went to the ground floor, at that time, where was the Bridgehead?
I'm not sure when the Bridgehead moved between the second and the third.
No.
It was, so I don't know. In fact, hold on, let's backtrack there because I actually went up, so it was on the third floor.
Okay. Now, we are trying to get a time for the move to the third floor from the second floor. How long after, see if we can do this, how long after Watch Manager Williams had started recording FSG on the wall in the lobby and shouting up to you, do you remember the Bridgehead move from the second to the third floor?
I don't remember the Bridgehead moving. I knew it had moved. I'm not sure how I knew that, but I've got no idea of the timings for that.
Before you moved to the ground floor, do you remember roughly how long the Bridgehead was on the 3rd floor for?
No, I don't.
Now, we have some potential evidence about the timing of the move. Gareth Cook, station manager Gareth Cook, who's going to give evidence later, says, and we'll explore this with him, that he says that it moved at about 2:15, which would be very shortly after Glyn Williams started recording on the wall. Would that be about right?
I really got no recollection of timings.
Right, okay. Now once, well, did you go up to the 3rd floor when the Bridgehead moved, or did you stay on the 2nd floor balcony?
No, I stayed on the 2nd floor at that point.
How did you continue to communicate with the Bridgehead, which was now a floor above you?
For that point, I was still taking the FSG and facilitating it, and I was just giving the numbers to the firefighters and forward them on to the Bridgehead, so I had no communication with them at that point.
I follow. And did your communications with Watch Manager Williams continue as they had done, even though the Bridgehead had moved up a floor?
They continued right until that point when I was told to go to the ground.
Okay. Do you remember how long the Bridgehead was on the 3rd floor for? But
No.
okay. Do you remember whether Watch Manager O'Keefe asked you to take a photograph?
Yes, he did.
And if I can just pick this up in your statement at page 8, you say that at the end of the second substantive paragraph, after you've referred to the move down to the ground floor, you say, just after that, another senior officer stood exactly where I had been. Now, just pausing there, is that on the 2nd floor?
2nd floor,
Right.
mezzanine.
He was with 10 wearers. There was no explanation. The Bridgehead had now been moved from the 2nd to the 3rd floor. I climbed up to the Bridgehead on the 3rd floor, where I saw firefighters in a queue waiting to go up. First, having been told to go to the ground floor in the way that your statement says, and you've just told us, Mr. Watson, why did you go to the 3rd floor?
So, as I explained, I was told to go to the ground floor to take the stage into the ground floor. As I was kind of the link for the FSG, I explained that. I was still told to go to the ground. So when I got to the ground, I spoke to Watch Manager Williams and asked him who's doing the FSG. He said he didn't know. So I said, okay, look after my staging post, and I went back up to the 3rd floor to find out what was happening with the FSG.
Okay, when you say what was happening to the FSG, do you mean at the Bridgehead?
Yeah, because to my mind the link had been broken. I was facilitating getting that to the Bridgehead, and now we didn't have that link. So I went past all of these people up to the 3rd to the Bridgehead to speak to Watch Manager O'Keefe.
Right, and did you have a conversation with him?
I did.
What did you talk about?
When I got there, I don't know if we actually mentioned what's happening in the FSG, because virtually as soon as I got there, someone said the fire's below us, we're now all going to move to the ground. And he then said to me, have you got your phone? I said, I haven't got my phone. And he pointed to a wall which had a lot of writing on, which again, I can only presume was FSG, but I couldn't photograph it for him. And then we all moved to the ground floor.
Okay. Do you know why he wanted you to photograph what was on the 3rd floor?
As I say, I can only presume it was FSG, and it would be good practice to carry that all downstairs with you.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask you then, just to, before we move to the next topic, look at MET quadruple 15625. Now, we have a think, established that that is the third floor and that the 3 is correct. Do you remember being asked, sorry, let me put it this way, do you remember whether this was what Watch Manager O'Keefe asked you to photograph?
I don't know.
Okay. After you went up to the Bridgehead on the 3rd floor and had the conversation with Watch Manager O'Keefe, where did the Bridgehead then move?
Literally, as we got there, someone said the fire's below us, and we moved straight downstairs.
All of you?
Everybody.
Okay. Now that's a moment when I'm going to move to the next topic. Would you like a 5-minute break, or are you happy to continue?
Well, just to suggest we might have one.
Yes.
I think 5 minutes would be a bit mean to ourselves, wouldn't it? If we said 5 to 12, we'd then have another hour to run before
That would be very good.
the break run.
That'd be very good, yes.
Yeah. Right, we'll break now until 5 to 12 then, please. And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while we're out.
Thanks.
All right, would you like to go to the usher now? Right, 5 to 12 then, please. Good. Comfortable to carry on? Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I want to turn now to the subject of the bridgehead moving down to the ground floor. In terms of timing, I wonder if we can just look at a few photographs together and see if we can fix that. But before I do you have a recollection of roughly how long after you'd started on the second floor balcony with your staging, how long after that the bridgehead moved from the third floor to the ground floor?
In all honesty, as I said, I didn't have my phone with me. I don't wear a watch, so no concept of time at all.
Okay. Now, if I can start then by asking you to look at INQ 234. That is a photograph taken of the bottom of the stairs by the green wall at the back. And the time mark for that adjusted is 030947. And we can see a lot of BA wearers coming down with some equipment, including a large bag. What would that large bag be?
That looks like an IEC bag, so with like medical equipment in it.
Right. Okay. And at 030955, just 7 seconds later, 8 seconds later, INQ 235, can you help us there with what we see?
So you've got Watch Manager O'Keefe
Right.
on the bottom of the staircase. I do not recognise any of the other firefighters.
Okay. And at 310, INQ 236, that is the lobby. Can you see yourself there anywhere?
I believe that looks like me, top middle of the picture there.
Right. It does.
Yes.
Do you remember being in the lobby with that throng of firefighters at around that time?
Yes, I do.
Right. And then if we go to the next picture, you can see, this is now at 31120, control boards are in the lobby next to the wall where originally Watch Manager Williams had been writing FSG information. Again, do you remember what was happening at this time?
What was the timing for this?
Well, we have an adjusted time of 03:11 and 20 seconds for this picture.
See, my recollection was the entry control board. So if you look to the right that someone's writing, my recollection was they was at the bottom of the stairwell and not there. So I don't recall that being there.
Right. Okay. Let's look at the next picture then, at 238. Now, there we have, if you look at the part of the wall where we looked at earlier with Glyn Williams writing FSG information, what do we see there? Can you help?
Yeah, it looks like he's collating FSG information on the forms that we looked at earlier,
Okay.
and possibly transferring to the wall.
All right. Now, I've shown you that, but do you remember? Do you have a recollection of that happening?
I remember him writing on the wall all night, not at that specific point.
Do you have a recollection of anybody writing anything once the bridgehead had moved to the ground floor on a green wall by the stairs?
So when we moved to the ground floor, at one point I became more of a runner between Glyn Williams and Watch Manager O'Keefe.
Okay. Now, let's just see if we can get an idea of that. Can you look at 239, the next picture in the sequence, which is taken at... that's not it. That should be... Is that 239? Right, let's look at 240 then. So, this is taken at the foot of the stairs by the green wall at the bottom, and it shows the BA control board there in the bottom left-hand corner of the picture. Do you know who that firefighter was in the white helmet?
No, I don't, but I can't recall his name. Group manager. Looking at the rank markings.
Yeah. All right. You don't remember that? Do you remember that happening? That the BA control boards were set up by that green wall at the foot of the staircase?
That's my recollection, that all the BA was set up across the foot of that wall.
Right. Let's skip on a couple more to 242. Do you recognise anybody in that photograph?
Yeah, so from the left you've got watch manager De Silva.
De Silva there,
De Silva, she's at Chelsea. You've got Justin O'Byrne from North Ken.
Right.
You've then got watch manager O'Keefe.
Right.
And I believe that is group manager Welch.
That's Welch, is it?
I believe so.
Right. Okay. And do you remember the BA entry control boards and other materials being moved to the foot of the stairs by the green wall there?
When you showed me the earlier photo with the BA board against watch manager Williams' wall, I don't recall that, but I do recall all the BA boards being on that wall where they are now.
Right. Okay. And given the times we've got for these, and this one I should say is at 03. Adjusted A31722. Does that help you with your recollection, or should I perhaps say, does this correspond with your recollection of roughly when the Bridgehead moved down to the ground floor?
As I say, timing-wise, I don't know, but I remember somebody said the fire's below us and everybody moved to the ground floor, and that's where we operated from after that point.
Right. Now, in his statement, Station Manager Wolfenden, Pete Wolfenden, says that he assisted you after you'd come down to the ground floor. Can you, from your recollection, tell us what Station Manager Wolfenden's involvement was, to the best of your recollection, once you'd come
my
to the
recollection was, I remember him being on the radio quite a lot, talking to outside, which I can only presume was a command unit or someone to do with the command unit. He was, I believe, taking numbers, writing things down. He was giving them to me, and I was forwarding them on either to the firefighters or onto watch manager O'Keefe.
Right. Now, do you know what time he arrived in the ground floor lobby?
I don't recall the time, but I don't believe he was there when we first moved down. I think we moved on a little bit time-wise. Yeah.
He arrived on the fire ground at 02:12:58. And these pictures are now an hour or so later. But do you remember what time he came to the ground floor to assist with the work you were doing when you had arrived at the ground floor?
I don't know time-wise, but I think we was on the ground floor lobby for a short period, and then he just appeared.
Right. Now, if we can just go back to let me start, if we take it in this order. If we can look at your contemporaneous notes, I think, first of all, and look at page 3. This is where you cover the move. The bottom of page 2, you say, I should just show you this. Bottom of page 2, you say, sometime later, the Bridgehead was relocated to the ground floor, and a GM came, group manager came, and informed myself, watch manager Williams, and station manager Wolfenden, that all FSGs were to go to him, then onto the relocated entry control boards. First of all, do you remember who the GM was?
Yeah, group manager Welch.
That's Welch. And the relocated entry control boards ended up where?
Where they was on that last photo at the foot of the stairs.
Right. Now, what was your understanding about Group Manager Welch's role on the Bridgehead at or from that point?
I had no contact with Group Manager Welch. When we got to the ground floor, I did witness him briefing crews, along with, the names come back to me now, Pat Goldblum, who was also a group manager.
Right.
But I had no sort of personal contact at that point.
Now, coming back to Pete Wolfenden, who you've referred to in your contemporaneous notes, he says in his statement that he was there to oversee Watch Manager Williams and yourself in coordinating fire survival guidance information. First of all, does that accord with your recollection?
That's correct.
Okay. He also goes on to say that he put information up on what he describes as the beige wall, i.e. not the green wall. Again, do you recall him doing that?
I don't recall him writing, but I know when I left the incident at the end of my time in the incident, he did record that on the wall. I witnessed him do that, so he
Right.
possibly was writing on the wall.
Okay. Now, just to show you a photograph, again, this is MET 000-15815, which is, or should be, LDS5. There's quite a lot of information there. Pete Wolfenden says in his statement that where there was a tick, well, do you remember what a tick represents?
I don't, because I didn't have any sort of dealings with a wall person.
Okay, all right. So you can't help us with what the ticks or crosses or circles represent on that?
No.
Okay. And can you help us with how much you know about Pete Wolfenden's input into the material that we see on the wall, the writing on the wall?
Actually, physically writing, I'm unaware, but I was quite busy, so he may well have written on the wall, but he had more of a overseeing role, as you've just stated.
Right. Now you were busy. Can you tell us what you were doing once the Bridgehead had moved to the ground floor and the writing up on the wall continued by Glyn Williams? What were you doing?
So I still had kind of a dual role. I was still organising getting EDBA, SDBA into the base of the tower, equipment as required, and I had a direct link with Watch Manager Brown, who was in the holding area outside of the incident. So just making sure that we had enough firefighters to send in. That was one of my roles, and the other role at that point was as FSG was coming in, he was giving them to me, and I was at this point I was still handing them direct to crews to go forward to the BA board.
Right. Who was handing you pieces of paper, FSG pieces of paper?
I believe at this point it was Station Manager Wolfenden.
Wolfenden. Right. In what form were those pieces of paper?
Handwritten.
I see. And they.
To my memory.
I see. So when we looked at the photograph earlier on, which LFB 0001929, I think most of those you said were Station Manager Wolfenden's writing.
That's only an assumption, because at that point I don't recall writing any more papers. They was being handed to me.
Okay.
And it's kind of a dual role. I was taking them to the wearers
Yes.
to give them where they was going, and I believe, because I had quite a lot of dealings with Watch Manager O'Keefe at that point as well,
Right.
forwarding that onto him, so he had an awareness of what we was doing as well.
Okay. So do you know where Pete Wolfenden was getting the information on the pieces of paper that he was giving to you?
I believe I'm correct in saying it was via his radio.
Did you see him
I did see him use his radio.
on his radio? Did you see him recording on paper what he was getting over the radio?
No, I didn't, but I did witness him using his radio. Whether or not we still had people coming in with slips of paper, I'm not sure.
Did you handle at that stage, did you handle any fire survival guidance information in the form of control information forms, those formal Appendix 2 control information
At no
forms?
stage in the incident was I given a formal piece of paper.
Right. Okay. When I say still, the answer, that was a bad question, but at no stage. Okay. Now, did you receive any debriefing from crews descending or from casualties being brought out about the conditions in the tower or success or failure of rescues?
At this stage now, where you saw the setup at the base of the tower,
Yes.
where the stairs were, the bridgehead effectively would have been stopping crews, but as they came through, and we now had a side entrance rather than the front entrance because of the amount of debris coming down, I did actually physically stop 2 or 3 people to find out where they'd come from.
Right.
And then went to direct face-to-face with Watch Manager Williams to give him that information. so he could update his wall.
Okay, and did you see him update the wall with the information you gave him?
I don't recall, no.
Okay. You don't know what system he used to
I don't know
update?
his system, but I know he was writing on that wall as I was telling him.
Do you know, or did you see what he then did with the information you were giving him about
I don't know.
conditions in the tower? You don't know? You didn't see him communicate that on to the
No.
command unit or
No.
somebody else?
No.
Okay. Were you able to keep tabs on FSG callers who actually managed to get out without being rescued?
At that point, I believe all the residents coming out were being brought out by BA crews.
Right.
And the actual logging of the FSG would have been more Watch Manager Williams. He would have had more of a overall view of that.
Okay. Now, do you remember at any stage, whether before or after the Bridgehead was moved down from the 3rd floor to the ground floor, that crews, being told that crews were struggling to get above the 11th floor?
I didn't have that information, no.
Do you remember whether you got information that they were struggling to get above the 15th floor?
No, again, that would have been more the Bridgehead and the watch or incident commanders that were near the Bridgehead.
Right, okay. Now, on page 9 of your statement, if we can just go to that, you say, in the 3rd paragraph, Welch and Wolfenden had a discussion, and the decision not to go above the 10th floor was changed to a maximum of the 15th floor. Were you privy to that discussion?
I was aware of the discussion, but I wasn't privy to the information that was passed.
How were you privy to the discussion? Were you standing there when they were talking?
So where that originates from, at this point, I was still directly giving firefighters information on where they was going, and I overheard who I now know to be Group Manager Welch say to somebody, we're not going to above the 10th, and I'd just given a crew a ticket effectively to the 11th, and they'd already been to the entry control, and they was just starting up at the bottom of the stairs pulling their masks on. And I asked him, did you say we're not going above the 10th? He said yes. And I said, I better stop that crew because they're going to the 11th. He said to me that I shouldn't be committing anyone. I told him I wasn't committing anyone because to my mind, I'd been doing this same format all night. So that crew was stopped. I think, just after that, I gave him some more, which came from Station Manager Wolferdine. I gave him some more FSG, I believe 5 in total, and it was all above the 10th. And he said to me, I told you we're not going above the 10th. So I gave them back to Station Manager Wolferdine, and he asked me what they were, and I said we're not committing above the 10th. And I recall him going onto his radio and inquiring and saying, can this be recorded that we're not going above the 10th? He then left me and went to have what I would call a tactical meeting with Group Manager Welch. And at that point, and it was quite short from my recollection, it was changed to the 15th, so we was recommitting back up to the 15th.
Were you told why the decision was made by Group Manager Welch not to commit above the 10th?
I wasn't, but what I would say, he would have had an overall view of, he would have been debriefing firefighters coming down, so he'd have had an overall view of the fire situation, and he also would have had an overview from outside of what was happening. So whereas I was kind of blindfolded to what was happening outside, right. I had no contact other than my staging area.
To be clear, was this the first time that you'd become aware that entry control wasn't sending BA crews above the 10th floor?
To my recollection, yes.
Do you know? Did you know how long they've been operating that policy for before you found out about it?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, you say in the third paragraph that there was this discussion. At that stage, you were more of a runner. Did you talk to Group Manager Welch directly, or did you only deal with Pete Wolfenden on this question of deployment above the 10th and the 15th floor?
I've probably gone into two bits that happened there. Once I stopped that crew going to the 11th, he then instructed me, all FSGs, to go direct to him.
Right. I see. Okay. Now, in the previous paragraph, where you covered this, what you've just told us in your evidence about pieces of paper going to Group Manager Welch, you say that my impression was, in the last line, that he didn't agree with Welch's decision. That's he, Wolfenden, didn't agree with Welch's decision. How did you get that impression?
The fact that he went straight onto his radio to say he wanted it recorded at this time.
Right. Do you know at this point who the incident commander was?
No.
Right. Who did you think the incident commander was?
I had no idea, because we're talking now maybe 3 hours into the incident,
right.
Whatever it was.
Okay. Do you know at that stage what the status of the FSG, sorry, the status of advice to residents was?
No, I don't.
Do you know whether the stay put had been changed or not?
I don't know.
Okay. Can we, I wonder whether we can time this by looking at some of the notes that Watch Manager O'Keefe introduced into evidence, and we've looked at already a couple of times this morning. That's LFB *01929. If we could just go back to that. We've looked at these a few times now this morning, but if you look at for example, the second one in from the left, you've got flats 111 to 115, all on the 14th floor, timed at 0410. Does that help you with your recollection of when this decision not to go above the 10th was made?
No, not really. As you can see from that, I was getting rather a lot of pieces of paper which were being forwarded on, and I wasn't really looking at numbers to be honest.
Okay, and what about any of the other pieces of paper? For example, the 11th floor, flat 82, 3 persons, 4:30, and 15th, yes, 15th floor at 4:20. Does that, again, do those help you with your recollection as to when this discussion about deployment?
Sorry.
All right.
No.
So, just to clarify one thing, if you could go to again, just one more time to MET 000158815. I've looked at this a number of times, and I probably covered this with you, but at this point in the night, when we're talking about floors, you can see there at the top of the picture somebody's written above 10 EDBA, below 10 SDBA. Do you remember seeing that being written on the wall or a wall during the night?
I don't remember that being recorded, but at the point when we was towards the sort of tail end of the incident, I do remember there being a lot more EDBA than there was SDBA, because that was part of my role, and I was in contact with a watch manager outside, and I was constantly asking him for more EDBA as opposed to standard duration.
Right. Now, Station Manager Wolfenden has given us a statement, and he says, and again, we'll have to explore it with him, that it was he who wrote those words, above 10 EDBA, below 10 SDBA. Does that accord with your recollection, or do you not know one way or the other?
I don't recall that being put onto the wall.
Okay. All right, well, we'll have to explore that with him. Now, we've had evidence from control room staff, Joe Smith, who was the senior operations manager in the control room on the night, and from DAC Adrian Fenton, who was also in the control room on the night. And they've told us that information that crews were struggling to get above the 15th floor was a factor in their decision, or their own decision, to change the FSG advice from stay put to get out, which we may well have been between 2:30 and 2:47 in the night. Does that tally? Does what I've just told you tally with anything that you can recall?
As I said earlier, time-wise, I'm very vague with times.
Right.
So I possibly can't.
If they're right about that, and crews weren't being committed or having difficulties getting above the 15th floor at, let's say, by latest 2:47, that would be before the Bridgehead moved to the ground floor on the basis of what we've looked at earlier. Would you agree with that?
That's possible. But
Okay.
just to reiterate, my role was staging and facilitating FSG, so the Bridgehead would have had a lot more overview of what was happening both outside and firefighters coming down.
Right. Do you remember whether there were any disagreements or other disagreements between the FSG team, that's you, Glyn Williams and Pete Wolfenden, and members of the Bridgehead team, as it were?
As we've just explored in my statement, when I was told we're not going above the 10th, I gave the papers back to Station Manager Wolfenden, who went straight onto his radio to the command unit. I witnessed that. Once he'd sent the message, he walked over and had what I would call a tactical meeting with Group Manager Welch, and the decision was then changed back to the 15th.
Now, Watch Manager Williams says in his witness statement that there was a verbal conflict, his words, between you and Group Manager Welch at about between 4 and 4:30 in the night. And the reason is because he says that there was FSG information being shared directly to Group Manager Welch without Watch Manager Williams' knowledge.
I think
Can you help with that?
That side of it, I'm not sure. I think the conflict, as he puts it, was when Group Manager Welch said to me I shouldn't be committing anybody, and
Right.
to which I replied that I'm not committing anybody.
Okay, so it's that same discussion.
I believe so.
I see, okay. You don't have any recollection of any independent, later or different disagreement with Group Manager Welch, do you?
So the only other point then, so that stopped that crew, and then as explained earlier, when I was given another 5 FSGs and I gave them to Group Manager Welch, he looked at them, handed me them back and said, I told you we're not going above the 10th.
Right.
To which is the point when I go back to Station Manager Wolfenden, he records it on the radio.
Okay. At the point when you were doing this running that you were doing between the wall and the Bridgehead, now on the ground floor, were you recording any of the information that you were getting yourself anywhere?
I wasn't, no.
Okay. Can I just show you a picture of the green wall, which if you just give me a moment, I will find for you. It's MET 000015816. In your, rollers runner on the ground floor, do you remember seeing anybody writing on the green wall?
Is this the wall next to where the entry control was set up at the base of the stairs?
Base of the stairs?
Yeah, so again, I'm not sure what was recorded, but I do recall Watch Manager O'Keefe recording stuff on there.
Right. Do you know when the recording of writing on this wall started?
I believe as soon as we got to the ground floor.
Right. Now, Louisa de Silvo has said in her witness statement, and again we'll explore it with her, but she says that the writing 183 daughter 21 or 22 was her. Do you have a recollection of her putting that up there?
No.
Right. And what about the big ring with 153 18th in it? Do you have a recollection of that?
No, I don't. No.
Okay. Now, let me just ask you one or two questions about a particular event. Firefighter Lawson has said that they came down and said they couldn't get people down from the 18th floor, and the telemetry data for tallying in for that firefighter was at 2:27. Do you have a recollection of being told at any stage of difficulties getting people down from the 18th floor?
The incident you're talking about, I don't recall.
Right.
No.
Okay. Do you remember Charlie Batterby telling you anything about difficulties getting people down from the 18th floor?
No, I don't. The only recollection I have, which is in my statement, I took a radio message on Channel 1 from a BA crew, so they switched from Channel 6 to 1. They said they was on the 10th floor. They had members of the public with them, I believe to be from flat 74. They said they needed assistance, so I took that message. I told them I was on the ground floor lobby. I went over to Watch Manager O'Keefe, told him. He then made a radio transmission to another crew, and then people were successfully rescued.
And do you know whether that information was recorded by Watch Manager O'Keefe or anybody else when you told them?
It was recorded to... at that point, I can't remember if Watch Manager Williams was still there or it was Station Manager Wolferdine, because Watch Manager Williams left quite early. But it was recorded, I believe, on his wall, because I took the information back, because I actually verbally spoke to them people.
Right. When you say his wall, which wall
As
was
in
that?
the lobby entrance wall, not the staircase.
Oh, okay, the beige wall, not the green wall.
The beige wall. That's correct.
Right, okay. So you recall that, do you?
I do, because I actually spoke to them residents when they came out, and I believe they're in my statement.
Right, okay. And do you recall, perhaps let's go back to that wall, a picture of that wall well, we were looking at, I think it's 15815, which is probably the clearest version of that we've got. Can you help us identify where on this wall that information was recorded?
As I say, my recollection was they told me, the firefighters said they was on the 10th floor, and the residents said they'd come from flat 74.
Yes.
Which is, looking at that, is down the bottom of that first list, ticked off. So 3 from the bottom.
I see. Okay, that's it, is it? Right, I follow. It looks like there's a separate list. I was going to ask you, in fact, because the central list has 74 on the 10th. As you can see there, next to it, with BA and then F, but no other information. Can you help with why that is?
It just looks as though maybe they've hung the phone up and called back again because they've been recorded again.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. But again, you'll have to check with Watch Ranger Williams as he was collating that information.
All right. And if I can just ask about one more, you can see in the second column on this same photograph, the flat 18152 appears to be deleted. 18th appears to be deleted. Looks it. Do you know anything about that?
In all honesty, other than flat 74, to my recollection, I actually spoke to them people and sent that message back to that particular officer and wall. Other numbers, during the night, I took so many numbers, I don't recall.
Right, thank you very much. Okay. On page 8 of your statement, you refer to the fact that you gave 2 prepared BA sets to 2 of your own firefighters for a woman and a child who lived in air. It's on page 8. It's the second paragraph down. I've summarised what you said there. Do you remember which firefighters this was?
Yeah, firefighter Felton, who's based at Hammersmith.
And who else?
I'm not too sure. I know he took 2 sets, 2 prepared sets.
Right.
But he was with another firefighter who I didn't know.
Okay. And is that the photograph we saw earlier?
I believe that was them actually exiting the building.
Yes.
But this happened on the 2nd floor balcony.
Yeah. Do you know whether that was the result of a fire survival guidance call that had gone through you or not?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. You also say in that paragraph in the statement, you say in the second line, I don't know what floor they were on, but the crew couldn't get them down as it was too smoke-logged. Who told you that the floor they'd come from was too smoke-logged?
So this was quite a pertinent moment for me. I now know this to be 158 from the operational response from the brigades, what the brigades printed. So my own firefighter came down, he said I need 2 sets, and I said to the next 2 people, get started up, and he said no, I need 2 BA sets. So I said, what do you need them for? He said the stairwell's too smoke-logged to get people down, and it was quite a sort of telling moment really that the escape route we're using is now smoke-logged. So I gave him the 2 sets, and I now know that a crew from Paddington was up in the flat with these people on the 9th floor, and we successfully brought them down.
And was this after firefighter Felton had come down to the Bridgehead from a deployment?
Yes, he'd already been deployed, and I believe the crew radioed them to come down and collect 2 sets.
Right. We have him with an end of wear time. Sorry, I should ask you first. When you had that discussion with him, had he ended his wear?
No, he was still in BA. He took 2 prepared sets in. He didn't shut down and went straight back upstairs.
Oh, I see. Right, okay. Okay. And did he then come back down again?
I didn't see him return. I was quite busy. I don't know if that was the point when the FSG had started or not.
Right.
But I was very consumed, and I didn't even see the people come back out.
Right. Okay.
But I do know that we successfully brought 2 people out.
Okay. And so that you think that was flat 158. How do you remember that it was flat 158 in particular?
No, I didn't say that. I just know retrospectively that it was the 9th floor. I don't know the flat number.
You don't know that. You don't know the
I
flat
don't know
number.
the flat number.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Watson. You've been very, very helpful, and I'm very grateful to you for coming to give evidence. I wonder whether, given the time, we might just take a 5-minute break, not by way of encouragement, but just by way of me being able to make sure I've covered everything
Yes.
in my notes, Mr. Chairman.
Well, should we do that, Mr. Watson?
Yeah.
We'll break for just over 5 minutes, and then Mr. Millett can see if he's left anything out,
Okay.
and then probably be able to go.
Thanks, sir.
All right? I'd like to go to the usher, please. Right, if I say 20 to 1, Mr. Millett, will that
Yes,
be all right?
that's very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very much. Right, Mr. Watson?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Watson, just a couple of questions. First of all, I wonder whether you could be shown, please, photograph 229, INQ 229. Now, this is time-stamped at 1:37 and adjusted. It's 1:36:27. You can see the AOV control panel open. My question was whether you could identify who else we see in that picture.
The black guy is on my watch. He's firefighter Murray.
That's Murray, is it?
That's
okay.
Murray. The other two I don't
We don't know. And on the right-hand side of the picture, there is a firefighter there assisting somebody on crutches coming out of the building. Do you know who the firefighter is?
I don't know, but he is a trainee. That's what the diamond represents on his helmet.
Right. Thank you. You gave an answer earlier in your evidence this morning about when I was asking you about the distribution of the slips that you were giving to firefighters at the staging area. Mm-hmm. The context was when you were on the second floor. Did you consider whether an FSG sheet or little slip of paper should be given to an EDB wearer or an SDBA wearer?
Again, it's in my statement. The line crew from Paddington came through quite early into the FSG, and I do distinctly remember I had a FSG to the 21st floor, and I stopped that EDBA crew and said to them, I've got an FSG, can you take it? And he told me no, they've been tasked to go to the roof.
Yeah.
And he asked me where the lift was, and that's where the discussion comes in about not using the lift. But I wasn't able to use them, so I had to go back to using standard duration because that's all I had in the line at the time.
Right. On the question of the using the crew to go to the roof, did you try to speak to Mike Dowden about the wisdom of that trip?
I didn't, because at that time I didn't know who had asked that, and what you've got to realise, it was a big incident. There was a lot going on, a lot of things I would have no knowledge on. So to intervene, there are a lot of, like, because we kind of sectorise, and so to intervene in a decision that's been made wouldn't be my place as a staging officer.
Before the Bridgehead moved to the ground floor, or rather, I'm sorry, before you moved to the ground floor, do you remember what availability there was for EDBA?
So on the second floor, it was limited, if at all. On the ground floor, it was quite well resourced.
Right, okay.
That's my recollection.
Do you remember roughly when the EDBA wearers turned up in numbers?
Definitely on the ground floor, but time-wise, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I was in close contact, as I said, with the holding area, and we did keep having a discussion. We need the EDBA as opposed to SDBA. So I would suggest, as it arrived, we was transferring to EDBA.
Right.
Once we had the availability.
And once you had the availability, was there a system for deciding who should be, which EDBA wearers should be deployed as opposed to which SDBA wearers should be deployed to a particular FSG
call? Take, if my memory serves me, as there was a lot of EDBA at this point, as I was getting FSGs, I was going straight to them as opposed to the SDBA.
Right, okay. Right, so when you use the word potluck as to who got the slip this morning, does that refer to decisions as to whether you send EDBA or SDBA?
No, everybody in my line at that point was SDBA, but when I say potluck, I do remember two floors, 23rd floor and 21st floor, and I tried to give the FSG to the EDBA crew who couldn't take it because they was tasked elsewhere, And I remember having a conversation with the pair that was going into the 21st floor, and they kind of said, are we going to get up to the 21st floor? And I remember distinctly saying to them, you can only do what you can do, because that's all we've got at the moment.
Yeah, so you tasked an SDBA crew to go to the 21st floor.
Yes, I did.
Even though they only had SDBA.
Because that's all we had at the time.
That's all we had at the time. Okay. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Watson, thank you very much for coming to give evidence. I've got no further questions for you, and I'm extremely grateful to you for coming to the inquiry today and assisting us. Thank you.
Could I just add in one last thing? Is that okay?
Yes.
Let's do.
Is that okay, sir?
Yes,
Thank
of
you.
course.
I would just like to say to a man and a woman in the fire brigade who was in that lobby, we was all there for one sole reason, to save as many lives as we could. And we all knew that building had been burning for many hours, still loses its tensile strength at 650 degrees. And we all knew that that building could come down. But we stayed there, I certainly stayed there till that FSG ceased. And I would suggest to a man and woman stood in that lobby, it must have been on everybody's mind. And I'd just like to say, we was there for one sole reason, to rescue as many people as we could.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed. And as Mr. Millett said, we're really very grateful to you for coming to give your evidence. There's a lot of evidence surrounding the handling of the FSG calls. And as you can tell from the documents you've been asked to comment on, it's not always easy to piece it together. So we're particularly grateful to you for coming along to tell us your part of it.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, you'd like to go to the usher now?
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Millett, that's a convenient point to break, perhaps.
It's the point to break.
Yes.
And that's right. And we have Station Manager Gareth Cook this afternoon. And looking at my notes, I'm confident that we should be finished before the end of the afternoon, even though it may be quite a long afternoon.
Right. So shall I say 2 o'clock? Would that be
Certainly
sensible?
2 o'clock, yes, thank you.
All right. Well, in that case, we'll break now and resume at 2 o'clock, please. Thank you.